Welcome back, y'all, to another wonderful episode of Dreams, Dollars, and Destiny. I'm your girl, Portia Cooper with the Soul Card Studio, joined by my co-host, Mr. Westbrooks with Supreme Numerics, and also Miss Queen B of Numerology. And we're here to bring you another hot topic. You know how we do. So let's get started. So this week's episode Ashley is going to talk about or lead back into something we were leading to on the last episode, which is, do we support one another or do we tear each other down? Right. So we always talk about situations where we're not doing enough in the community for one another, or we're either tearing each other down. And, this kind of all started within the summer of 2013 when the death of Trayvon Martin kind of just was a turning point for everybody. It was a collective moment of grief, solidarity, and a promise for change. But as powerful as the moment was, it kind of left a question that still lingers today. What happens after the whole fades? Because remember, after Trayvon Martin's death, the Black Lives Matters movement was created, and there was this big public outcry and outpour for something to be done about this. So in this video, we're going to take a honest look at the difference between short-term movements fueled by emotion and then the kind of long-term sustained support that actually creates lasting change within the Black community. We'll talk about why momentum is, often stalls, and what it truly takes to keep showing up for one another beyond the viral moment, right? Beyond the social media hype. And whether that is, but whether we're buying from Black businesses or amplifying each other's work or mentoring the next generation or even just investing in our communities, or you can just show up and simply uplift one another. And guess what? This is simple to do, right? To uplift someone, to exemplify someone and what they're doing, or just to shine a light on someone who's doing good in your community doesn't take much. So we'll dig into one of the most important truths that actually gets lost in conversation, and that, again, supporting each other costs you nothing, right? Costs you nothing to uplift someone. So guess what? And that doesn't take away from you either. It only multiplies that if we continue to do this for one another, then we continue to grow as a community and as a people. And we show that we're living proof that what we talk about today will also impact our future and change it for the better. So, because we have the power to change everything, it's in our destiny to do that. And so, we're going to talk about that today and how we can support one another. So let's hop into the conversation here. I know I started off talking a little bit about Trayvon Martin because for me, that's kind of where everything started with the Black Lives Matter movement just shortly thereafter, after his death. And it just seems to me we all came together, we all coalesced. And then the George Floyd moment happened in 2020. And then we came together again and we are thinking that more change was going to happen. But then it just kind of stalled out, right? 6 years later, I don't hear anything that's happening as far as anything being positively done to help our community or uplift our people. And then on top of that, police brutality has continued. We talked about this before the show. Trayvon was he was murdered in 2013, and George Floyd was murdered in 2020. And in between those years, a lot more Black people were killed, right? And we don't have anything to show for those deaths. So let's kind of hit that. If you want to start off, Mr. Westbrooks, touching on that a little bit.
Sure. So, good evening, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for joining us. As always, happy to spend this time with my two sister colleagues in the astronumerology and metaphysical field. And it's great to connect and hang out with you all here on Dreams, Dollars, and Destiny. And I would say that this is a multifaceted issue that we're dealing with here. And it's a deeply rooted issue. That's what I would like to kind of touch on and focus on, is that in this process of supporting one another, we're also going through a healing process that is centuries old. Some may argue and subscribe to the post-traumatic slave syndrome concept that we are still experiencing the after effects of slavery that happened 400 or 500 years ago. And it brings to mind a work that I read when I was in college back around 2011, 2012. The book was published in 2010, and it kind of uses the Barack Obama presidency as a focus, and then it expands the conversation. But I'm referring to this book called Brainwashed by Tom Burrell. And Tom Burrell is a former advertising and marketing professional, and he created a movement to promote more positive images of Black Americans in the media. But he speaks about the top social ills affecting Black people, centered around the Black inferiority complex. And one of them out of the 10 that he lists is how we tear each other down. And he ties that back to the slavery times, and he identifies, I believe it's five dynamics of disunity: crabbing, backstabbing, lack of coalescence, lack of support and mistrust of Black goods and services, and exceptionalism. And he gives the historical roots and the contemporary manifestations of those. So part of this conversation is healing ourselves from something that's deeply rooted and also systematic. So it didn't happen by accident. It was a plan that was put into motion by the ones who, attempted to control us. So crabbing, that is the act of, and I'm going to read from here, complaining about Blacks who have moved ahead and trying to pull them back into the barrel of inferiority. They desire to keep ambitious or visionary Blacks in their proper place. And the historical root of that was American chattel slavery, in which Blacks were pit against each other. And the collectivism was discouraged. And that starts with the differences in cultures and languages in Africa, and how everybody was kind of lumped together, even though they have so many cultural differences. And then that, extends to the plantation, in which Black people were pit against each other. Certain Black people were made overseers and drivers to pit us against each other. Others were rewarded for betraying, one another. And that brings us to backstabbing, the act of jealousy, envy, and hateful behavior towards other Blacks, the willingness to sabotage another person's possible success. And that speaks to the backstabbing, betrayals, and the snitching, and the rewards for doing that to one another, because it gives us gave the idea that we were closer to whites when we do that. The lack of coalescence, the refusal to unite to create a strong collective, fear that another Black person at your level will threaten your job or upward mobility, operates independently at a substandard level and never gains traction from collective effort. And that speaks to how the whites aggressively discouraged coalescence among the enslaved. And we were brainwashed to distrust and disrespect each other and to diminish our efforts. And then we had the lack of support and mistrust of Black goods and services, the idea that the white man's ice is colder, the belief that goods and services created or distributed by Blacks are inherently inferior, therefore refusing to support them. And lastly, exceptionalism, the exception to the rule theory, feeling special, being the only Black in all white circles, feeling extremely gratified when whites compliment you for being different from other Blacks. So he identifies those 5 dynamics and the historical roots. So I'll get to the contemporary movements and how short-lived those were. And that's also historical too. We've seen in history that any movement that was successful was long-term. It wasn't just for a month. It wasn't just for 3 months. Most people are familiar with the Montgomery bus boycott, which lasted for the entire year. And I don't think any of these movements after Trayvon Martin, Mike Brown, George Floyd, and then the nature of those movements had their distinctions. Some were more social, while others were a combination of social and economic. Because I noticed that there was a more of a boom in the economic movement when it came to the George Floyd. I saw a lot more talk about business and supporting businesses, especially with the Blackout Facebook group, which was a national group that was created on the heels of the George Floyd incident. And then they identified a particular week or day in August in which only Black businesses were supported. But again, something that was only sustained for a short amount of time. Of course, the Facebook group still exists now, but I don't receive any notifications about it. Once in a while, people might post in there. I'm looking for a Black dentist or looking for a Black dry cleaner, but just those kind of individual instances and not really a collective endeavor in which everyone is stepping and moving together at the same time. So the reasons for that can tie back to those dynamics that Tom Burrell mentioned in his book. But of course, there could be other factors, but what's really needed is a healing from the inside and out, along with, of course, the practical steps and how we can support one another and lessen the amount of tearing down and disunity.
For sure. For sure. Queen, you wanted to kind of piggyback on what Nick was saying?
Yeah, I think that was a great opening, Nick. And I definitely can see and have experienced a lot of what you read from the book. And, we all experience these things as a community, right? So, yeah, we have to look at long term sustainment when we look at coming together because, yeah, when something happens, we're always there. We want to come out, we want to support, which is great. But Nick is right. We have to sustain that. And a lot of the things and movements from back in the day, had that kind of sustainability. And that's why they got things done and got bills passed and worked toward a goal. So we just have to kind of keep that up. And I do think that it's a challenge. It's a challenge for our community to do that, especially when you continue to have different systematic barriers in front of you. So I do think that it's definitely very heavy, it's very heavy. So we definitely have to get back to just looking at what the things that we need and looking at the long-term support because when we do come together, we move mountains. Just like with the blackout group when we were like we boycott certain stores. When we do that, there's a lot of power in that because those stores lose a lot of money and then they start to maybe change their tune about whatever that issue is that we're confronting them with. Okay. And that's how one way that we can make some change, but it's going to take for us to stick together and it's going to take to us to follow through. And I think what I think about it is it's almost like it's you're just doing it for the viral moment. So it just seems like another viral moment with a lot of the different things when we do come together. It's that viral moment and then after that you're just on to the next thing and you're not really sustaining that energy. And then we just fall back into the cycle of how we've been operating. So I think, it's going to take a big change in our mindset of how we view each other. There's a lot of healing to be done there. And that's why we do what we do to help people to heal, to help people to understand who they are so they can have a better chance of understanding their family, their community, and their friends. And then we can give each other more grace with certain things that we interact with, and give each other more grace and therefore support each other more. So I think that's the main things that I want to add it on to what Nick so brilliantly, you know, conveyed.
And when just making a combination of what you guys are saying and just going back into like the 50s and 60s where we did actually have communities. Remember the Black Panthers and Fred Hampton, the group he had up there. So we actually had movers and shakers in the 60s that actually were putting forth some type of community effort that was sustainable. Healthcare, they had meal programs, they fed the hungry, they gave shelter to the homeless. I mean, they did all these things within the community, but it's just unfortunately, just like we alluded to, that these things were systematically dismantled, right, by the powers that be because they don't want to see us thriving in that capacity. We have tried many times to have our own community, to be self-sustaining, to be with all within our own economic system. And each time it gets dismantled by the powers that be because they don't like for us to come up. And you're right, they don't want to see anybody become the next Messiah. They don't like nation building. That was the whole thing about Tupac. Tupac had a way with words that he can build a nation. People are ready to ride and die. If Tupac hated somebody, everybody hated that person, right? And so he had so much of an influence that they had to cut that off. And it seems to me that if we can't have a leader that we can follow in this, that's where the problem is coming in because we don't have a clear leader, right? In this community, there is no clear leader. We thought we had an Al Sharpton. We thought we had a Jesse Jackson. We thought we had, this person, that person. But neither one of those leaders were in for our greater good and to help the community at large. And so, what do we do now because we don't have a direction? The Black Lives Matter, it was cool, but I think it was a merch moment, right? I think in 2020 it became a merch moment. Everybody was wearing the T-shirts, wearing the mask and stuff with the Black Lives Matter. So there was a lot of stuff being sold to people, but it was through propaganda. And that's why that organization didn't work because at the end of the day, the powers that be don't want to see us come up. So what's your thoughts on that as far as, not having a clear leader in this? You have these organizations out here that really aren't doing much for the community and nothing has really changed.
So I'd like to just speak on that real quick because you're right. I mean, this is what we're dealing with, and we'll just take this back now to the 60s, like you said, when our two major leaders that we had in the Black community were assassinated, and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. To me, once those two were assassinated, that struck a great deal of fear in the Black community. It struck a great deal of fear in all of us to the point where we kind of went away from fighting for our rights, right? We were fighting for our rights. The civil rights bill, yeah, it got passed, but when the civil rights bill got passed, a lot of that did not benefit us in certain ways, right? A lot of the things, and this is again, like you said, the powers that be, you keep saying that, keep tearing down everything we do. And it just points back to everything with our history, not to get too deep into that, but it's what it points to. And this is the thing that people want to continue to skip. They want to continue to skip the reasons why we're like this and why the society at large is like this, right? Why do the powers that be continue to tear us down when we build up a Black Wall Street or when we build up different
Wealth
um,
in general, right?
different
Empire.
things in general,
Yeah.
right? So what that leads to is we're still scared as a community. And I think we got scared so much after Martin Luther King and Malcolm X was assassinated, we have gave up the fight of freedom because truly our freedom is not had here. There's still things and tangible things that we need that we should be fighting for, even if it's just to be left alone in our hoods so we can build and give us loans in our own neighborhoods. You look at any Black neighborhood, you see every type of store from every other ethnicity except for a Black American store. You see everything else. You see
Hmm.
Indian, you see Chinese, you see poppy stores, you see Haitian stores, African markets, and all that. Nothing for us though. So, and then what ends up happening is we don't, we're not able to build in the communities, we're not able to build wealth. and pass generational wealth down between that and home ownership and amongst other things, right? So then we continue to stay poor. Then yeah, we are the consumer class. Why? Because we have to be the consumer class because we don't own nothing. See, they created us. They created this. And then
Yeah.
they ridicule us for how we are as a community. But we have come a long way. But at the same time, we are still scared and we need to get off of that. We need to get back on priority to me about, and that priority is fighting for the tangible things that we need as a society, you know? And really, like I said, everyone wants to skip that history part. But that's the reason why this whole society is the way it is, based on us. It's all about us. We're the main character in the story, yeah. And I know
Mhm.
people like to, racist people like to make fun of that and all that. Do what you will, but it's the truth.
We are.
So you can make fun of it all you want. Everything that is done in this country is done to spite us, against us, to dismantle us, to destroy us. Everything is built on it. The Constitution, the laws, all of it is built on that. And that's what they continue to do. So we're systematically trying to fight that while we're fighting each other. So it's like we're so distracted. We're all everywhere except for what we need to be prioritizing on. And let me just real quick talk about the leader. I don't really think we need a leader. We need to lead ourselves. What needs to be the leader for us is the things that we need. What do we need as a community? That's the leader. That's what leads us. What tangibles do we need to secure for ourselves? What bills do we need to pass to protect our community, to protect us against hate crimes that we are the victim of the most in this country? Okay, from every race, right? So these are the types of things that should be leading us, the tangible things that we need to sustain us as a community long term, to be a nation within a nation. And I'll land my plane there.
Yeah. Beautifully said.
Yeah, and even during that time prior to and after the assassinations of Dr. King and Malcolm X, there was still a lot of division and infighting, a lot of differences over what was the best or what was the correct way to reach our liberation. The traditional civil rights movement kind of opposed the more militant movements and vice versa. And without us seeing the bigger picture that there is room and space for all of those methods. And we more than likely we need a multifaceted approach rather than it just being either or. It should be a little bit of everything. Just like we need our people on every level and every position, from the grassroots to the C-suites, in order to really, really make some movement to where we want to go. And we still see that division now across social political organizations, and like our previous episodes and our religious and spiritual movements, still a lot of division. And the consumerism stems from our beliefs about ourselves, that we were miseducated and mistaught, that the material and the image and the appearance of wealth, not actual wealth, but the appearance of wealth, is what defines our worth, which we talked about in previous episodes too. And miseducation has been a big part. Like Queen B mentioned, the history, but also the economics and the finances too. A lot of how we're missing out on owning comes not only from this inferior mindset that we need the other people's materials in order for us to feel valuable and worthy, but also how we manage what we have too, and going through the proper protocols and process in order to get those loans and set up those businesses. And we're so fearful to the point where we don't even know if if someone's going to destroy destroy what we build because we haven't built it yet. So it's like that was a form of programming and strategic in itself to get us to not even get to that point where we're rebuilding a Black Wall Street. And we built so much distrust and division amongst each other that we do it to ourselves. We don't even need someone from another race or another ethnicity to destroy it or tear it down, because we do it to each other. So that's why it'll take a holistic approach, a holistic healing, where it'll start with the refinement of each individual, and then that person's immediate family, then that person's immediate neighborhood, city, state, country. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if that answers the question, but
yeah, you have to start where you are, and to make the change and have that impact. But the sad thing about all this is the fact that Black culture is the most marketed culture worldwide, right? What did Paul Mooney say? Everybody want to be a nigga, don't want to be a nigga. Like, you have so many people worldwide that love our music, our hair, our the way, our style, just the way that we do things, our lingo, our language, right? All that stuff, how we move. They're envious of that. They want to mimic that, and they package that. All the plastic surgery that a lot of women get are for enhancements that Black women are naturally have: the bigger lips, the bigger booties, the bigger boobs, right? All that stuff is mimic in a play off of us and what we naturally have. And for me, it's really a shame to see that these other nationalities, ethnicities, or whatever, are making money off the backs of us. And some would argue that, in 2026, we have more Black billionaires than ever, right? We have more Black billionaires than ever. Then why is it that the community is still suffering? Well, when people make it to a certain level, they're told not to do certain things with their money, right? And so this is what I'm talking about. So there are still restrictions on us coming together as a community and helping each other and empowering us to move up to this next level, because again, we're being suppressed in ways that we can't see, right? And it's being done economically, socially, and systematically. There was a lot of Black wealth in Atlanta before they started. I think it was Peachtree, Georgia, or Peachtree Street. They had a lot of Black millionaires with big mansions and whatnot. The one guy had his own bank, but the white banks were blocking him out of getting the bigger loans and things like that. And then they had the audacity to run the interstate through where these Black mansions were, right? So there's no record of some of these homes even being there. There's no record of Black wealth even existing in that area. And this is what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? This is things that have been happening through history. And yeah, you're saying that we don't need a leader, but we need somebody to give us some direction. I don't care if it's a group of people or what have you, but we need to come together and talk this out and see what direction we need to head as a collective to get some things done. Because for me, it's all about having a conversation about where we are now and where we would like to go and how we're going to get there. No one's having that conversation. No one's talking about what's really going on and how other cultures have basically become billionaires off of our backs, right? And we're not even able to take advantage of our own talents and resources when it comes to the music, sports, whatever.
Yeah, well, actually, the grassroots is doing that. There's a grassroots movement that does do that. And it may not be ideal for some people because of some of the players that are involved in it. But, the grassroots does do that. And it needs to grow more. I think it is growing more. I think the younger people that are coming up are starting to kind of see that, because it's hard not to see it, especially if you're living it and you're experiencing it. You feel it, you see it, it's happening. And I think now more than ever, it's being spoken about publicly more than it ever has been in history, right? So I do think that, I'm proud of the grassroots movement. I cover a lot of the stuff that they do on BTV. So they are doing that. But again, to me, and I agree, it is nice to have someone that can kind of organize and kind of like keep everyone together. But at the end of the day, I think, like, to Nick's point, like how we're so divided, that even becomes people are divided from that, because if it's a certain person that they don't like, they're not even listening to the stuff that the person's saying. They just don't like that person. So that just throws everything out of the window for them. So that's why I said, we need to let, being on code be the leader. That's one of the things that they talk about, being on code with each other. And that's black, black first, you know what I'm saying? Standing on code and sticking together, protecting each other, when we're out there, buying from each other, supporting each other. And they do talk about that stuff. So, that's something, maybe to tap into a little bit and try to see what else, you like about that or don't. But that's the whole point. Even within that, there's division, and people say that some of the things that they do cause division, which don't. It's not division when you're trying to sustain yourself and you're trying to get yourself together after we've been bullied for, I'll just use the 500 years because we always use the 500 years. I'll use that. We've been bullied for the past 500 years in this country. We're finally now starting to like stand up for ourselves a little. You know what I mean? Of course, the civil rights movement, great, we got that. But like you said, the immigrants come in, they all got rich off our back. That was kind of the plan. And we're still, all these years later, we're still nowhere, right? We're still in the same place. We still don't own not even more of the wealth than we owned after slavery. So it's terrible. So that's what I'm saying. So it's like we have to at some point let what we need to do as a community be the leader. And for me, and I'm gonna say this from being a number two person, we have to kind of agree to disagree sometimes. Like, and let what we need supersede how we feel about each other and whether we agree totally, because no one's going to totally agree with everything totally somebody else is doing or the way they're doing it. But at some point, we're going to have to put these petty little differences to the side to say these are the things we need. These are the things that are important, and these things have to come first, right? And that's that black first. These things have to come first. These are a list of things, and these are the list of things now that we're demanding from the government. I'm just going to say, because that's who we're demanding it from, right? So different things, we're going to have to get laws passed, anti-hate crime bill, get reparations. I'm going to say that, yeah, we're going to get our reparations for what was done to us. And it's not just chattel slavery, but that's where it starts, right? It starts there, and then it goes all the way through the Civil War, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, segregation, all of that, lynching, continued systematic redlining, cut out of everything. So yeah, we need to get what's coming to us, but we're not going to get it if we don't stay on code with each other. So that's what that's about. And that's a part of what the grassroots is doing, but there's division there. So again, it's about putting things to the side for the greater good of what the community needs, not wants, needs. Because if we don't get it together at some point, we're diminishing. We're going to be diminished into oblivion, especially with all the laws that are being passed in the climate that we're in now. It's no time like the present for us to come together and really do this.
Facts. Facts. Did you want to add something, Nick?
Okay. Nope. You can take
well,
us to the next.
Well, what I was about to say, I know we're talking about this on a community level. Let's talk about this on a personal level, because we're talking about whether or not we build each other up or tear each other down. I see a lot of time in the workplace where other Black women will tear down other Black women or try to prevent another Black person from getting that promotion or getting ahead. Why is it that we tear each other down in the workplace? So let's go there, because yeah, the community thing is one thing, but it's another thing when we're talking about individual hating in the workplace instead of giving people their props and their accolades and whatever else they need, and then just congratulating them on getting past a certain level. We can't do that. Why do we harbor that kind of resentment towards anybody who gets ahead that looks like us?
Yeah, well, I mentioned that in the in the
I was gonna say
Disunity
Nick touched on it. Yep.
Yeah,
it was in one of them. Nick, can you recall that one that you said?
Yeah, I'm going back to it right
now. I mean, I know it's in the book, but it's still going on today. And that's one of the things that needs to be addressed, because it is all psychological warfare that they used on us. And also, I want to touch on this. And the reason why we're still backwards is the crack era. The crack era put a lot of adults at handicap, and it put the teenagers in a more authority role, right? Because the ones that were
Mhm.
dealing were teenagers and the adults were the ones being served. And so that put us back generationally. And so that handicapped the community severely because you had a lot of would-be leaders that were on dope, right?
Yeah,
Well,
So
that's a
that
part of that plan to kill the Black Messiah. Drop
yeah,
the
exactly.
drugs, do the genocide, and all of that.
yeah, yeah. Because all of that happened in succession. So the end of the civil
Mhm.
rights movement, and then
Mhm.
originally the Bloods and the Crips were established as the babies of the Black Panthers to continue
Hmm.
that work, and then somehow that shift happened, and then they started becoming self-destructive towards one
Mhm.
another, and then the crack era on top of that. So it was like in succession right there.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And we
and then
haven't
when
even
you're
started.
dealing with so much poverty, like, Nick has pointed out in some of the things that he said earlier, like when you're dealing in that type of mindset, I mean, it's hard, to really climb yourself out of that because you're trying to think of ways to help yourself, maybe help your immediate family to get out of that. So that does give us kind of a mindset to pit ourselves against each other because we're only near each other. That's who's in proximity to us. We're not in proximity to anybody else, and we're really just at competition with each other, which we really shouldn't be because again, when we put the bigger goal ahead of us is what we really should be focused on. But it is hard when you're living in such impoverished conditions and you don't have nothing to eat and all that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So
true,
I,
but you don't have to throw people under the bus, though. You know.
yeah,
Yeah, well, you said, yeah.
mhm,
Yeah, I'm just
yeah.
saying. I'm just saying.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I will say that in those settings, like in those corporate settings, the the people in power that control those environments, they create that environment of competition, and they and they get amusement from it, while black women or whatever group it is are fighting amongst themselves, they're on top getting amusement from it. So they create those conditions of not only competition but rugged individualism to disempower the collective. So I see
Mhm.
it happening that way, and we just tend to not be conscious of what's happening, and how it's deliberately happening, and we just kind of fall into that trap unconsciously. That's part of it. And again, that divide and conquer, and the act of pointing out those differences between one another, and that act of competing against one another, that has its roots in history, and it's still manifesting itself now in contemporary times.
Mhm. Yeah, and sometimes a person. I've seen women just hate on another woman just because she's cute or something, right? It doesn't. She didn't have to do anything, say anything, right? And I'm talking about that. Instead of just being like, oh well, she's attractive and just leaving it at that, or not even saying anything. Why do you have to hate? Because somebody may look better than you, may dress nicer than you, may have something nicer than you, right? So for me, that mindset needs to change. We need to start uplifting people. If someone is attractive, no matter male or female, why can't you say, oh well, they look nice, right? And leave it at that. You ain't got to say a whole lot. But why do we always go negative? And that's the issue that I have, right? We always want to put somebody down before we say something nice about them.
Yeah,
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 and I say to that, Portia. Yep, and what I say to that, Portia, because Queen B always got some slang, and
mhm,
Nick could have wore this shirt today. And what I say to that, royalty rules. We have to recondition ourselves with new rules. We have to be the progenitors to set the bar because look at the conversations that we're having. We're aware of this, right? So we're aware of this stuff. It's up to us to change things so we can show the a younger generation come up a different way. Here's a different way you can do things other than how we were conditioned to do them. So that's why I come up with royalty rules. That's respect, uplift, love, empower, and support one another. And when you do that, you're royalty. Those are your royalty rules to be royalty. And we have to start like really believing in that and really spreading that as many of us as we can, and you're always going to have some negative people or the lowbrow people who just don't want to engage in, their raising their spiritual AI, their spiritual awareness and intelligence. You're going to have that. But it's up to us to really set that example for the ones coming up that are looking for that, right? They're looking for a different way. They're looking for direction and guidance on how they can be. And maybe if we start doing that more as a community, and to me, the conscious community, the spiritual community, we're the ones, to me, that have to kind of set that tone in a way, because we're aware of it, and if you're not aware of it, then you don't know it's a problem. And I think that's what's wrong also with a lot of the people in the community. They're really just not aware of it in a way that it's meaningful, where they can abstractly understand, like, this is why it's like this, so it's up to the people who have the knowledge to kind of like be that light and be that guide, and just lead by example, like we do here on this show. We said this show was an example of how do we support each other. Yes, we're three people who are in the same field, and we all support each other. We support each other. We came together, we're doing a podcast together, and outside of that podcast, we've supported each other through along the way. So we're that example. We're leading by example, and I think that's the best thing that we can do. And I think that sounds like one of the solutions. Lead by example. Be that change you want to be. And I won't go too more into my BTV isms.
Yeah, but
But yeah, that's what it's all about. It's about setting that bar, and that your balanced ability to respond and to react, and to really be engaged and do the things that you want to do, and change the way you want it to be changed. And then that's what you're going to attract to you, and the people who are looking for that will be attracted to you. And
yeah,
then you guys can build from there, and you build that community out from there.
yeah. And it's really about us seeing each other as brothers and sisters, and then
Hmm.
seeing each other as kings and queens, right?
Kings
Uplifting
and
us up.
queens up.
Yep, kings and queens up, and
That's
treating
right.
each other like brother and sister, because ultimately we are one with the creator, right? No matter your skin color, you are still one with the creator. But for us,
Mhm.
and I know for me personally, I just have an affinity towards our own people, right? Anytime I see a
Mhm.
melanated person, I feel like we've been through the same sorrows and struggles. But, we also brought this up in a past conversation that people that look like you don't necessarily support you, right?
Or
So
they're
they're
not you, because they don't have the same history or cultural ethnogenesis as you.
exactly, and everybody
So,
thinks
and
that
that makes it harder for us as a community,
exactly,
because right, right. There
exactly,
you go,
queen.
queen.
Exactly, queen. It makes it harder for us here in America because they're looking to take our spot, right?
Right.
Whatever we got going on in the projects is much better than what they had going on wherever they're from, right? And so you're thinking, well, this person is a melanated person. They should be on the same bandwagon as I am. They're not with you, right? And so making that discernment as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have that shirt. I gotta get that one. I got the other one. I got the one with
Which
the
one?
I got the one with the what was it, like, it has like 5 words on it, has like the respect.
That's royalty rules. You have that.
Don't you have
You
another,
have
like,
that.
don't you have like another
You
one, like a different one that
you
that
have
has like different words on it?
Yes, I do. I do have one
Yeah,
with
yeah,
different words. It's
yeah,
right
yeah.
this,
I
yeah,
know. I don't have the
universal
rules
love.
one. I have the other one.
Yeah. All right. Well,
It's in
see,
the laundry right
he supports me. See,
now.
He supports me, right? That's an example right there of how you can support one another. You know, the queen, I support the queen. She supports me. Like when we have products, they buy my products, I buy their products. If they have some, like, this is how we have to do it. We got to do it that way.
Yeah, definitely. And so we can hop into the solutions since you're already bringing them up. One of the things that we have for our solutions is investing in our communities, right? If you can buy black owned from black owned businesses, then definitely do that. Just like what Mr. Westbrooks were saying, it's one of those things where, and even Queen even mentioned it, that, even in our own neighborhoods, a lot of our stores are not owned by us, which is a shame, especially the hair stores. It's really disheartening to walk into a hair store and every time you walk in there, it's managed by someone who doesn't look like me. But yet, the main customer base is me, right? People that look like me. So if we can start creating stores and products specifically for our people that our people can buy from one another, I think that that would help us grow our community even better. right? And cut out those other ethnicities from the black dollar. If we can keep black dollar circulating in black hands, then that will help us build our community even more. So with that being said, always uplift one another and don't put each other down. If someone looks nice today, compliment them instead of putting them down. Give someone a smile, donate something, right? If someone has a cause, a charity or something going on, definitely donate, especially if it's something that involves the community. And then another good thing to do is to mentor the next generation, right? To be better than you. Just like Queen mentioned, we need to take the time to show the younger generation there's a better way, right? We may not have done this, but this moving forward, we're going to make our people better and we're going to start with you, right? Let them know that and instill wisdom in them and invest time as well. Because I think of what happens with a lot of the teenagers and the youth is that time is not invested in their well-being, right? The direction they're going in life and in their dreams, right? And help them reach their goals and then show them each one teach one, right? So at the end of the day, you're showing them to be a better person and hopefully they'll be in a position to be a community leader as well. So at the end of the day, we're just trying to give everybody some solutions because this show is one that we talk about problems, but we also want to give you guys some solutions that you can actually bank on at the end of the day. And it's all about strengthening the Black community, but the community at large, because I feel like we're left behind because we don't know how to come together in certain ways. And yes, our differences will have to be put aside to do that. But I just feel like people want to do something, but they don't know how. And so, just like what Mr. Westbrooks was saying, start small, start within your home, start within your family, and then maybe your neighborhood, right? And then from there, extend further out into your city. But start local and start where you are, right? It doesn't have to be this big grand gesture. You don't have to go and create another Black Lives Matter or anything like that. You can just start where you are. And so, I don't want anyone to feel overwhelmed.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what I'm going to say is royalty rules. That means you respect, you uplift, love, empower, and support first yourself, then your family, and then that extends to your community. And that is how we rebuild the nation in a more supportive way, in a more community based way, where we're putting ourselves first. Okay. We got to put our differences to the side and put ourselves first. And you do that by royalty rules. So that's what I want to add on to that. And I know Nick's got something to add on to that.
Well, first, an apology because you are right. I do have that. I do have the royalty rules. It was I was trying to think of what was the acronym. It is rules. When you wrote them all out, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I do. I had two of those. I have a T-shirt and a sweatshirt. That was my favorite one out of the collection right there. The royalty rules.
Thank you. Yep, yeah. I love that one too.
Yes. Yeah. But just to add on to what I said earlier, and just in closing, I would say that proper education and the application of that proper education will be key. And as Melinda said, educating ourselves on the history of how we got here, because when we know how we got here, we know what to look out for and what to avoid, and we can come up with those solutions and those strategies to counteract the programs and the orchestrated attempts to disempower us. We can see it coming from a mile ahead, and we also notice that nothing's new. Like they're employing the same strategies. It may look different because we have new technology and it's packaged in a different way, but proper education in history and also proper education in terms of business and personal finance and economics too, and to couple that with stepping away from the victimhood too, because it's a duality to it. While we have experienced several examples of suppression, there's also examples of our success too, of us getting it done. So
Mhm.
we can't allow the victimhood to keep us from trying, and also to
Mhm.
keep us from self accountability too, and being honest with ourselves. Like, are we honestly putting our best foot forward when it comes to our progression and our elevation? All right, we see these other ethnicities setting up. Oh, I let you get that off. We see we see we mentioned seeing these other ethnicities setting up shop and setting up these businesses, but we we got to speak to our success stories and those individuals and those groups who have set up their businesses, and yes, we need that education from them. Like, okay, how did you do it? what did you what did you do to get your credit in line so you can get that loan from that business? Before we attribute it to someone keeping us down, let's make sure we went through the proper protocols and the proper steps, and did everything the right way first. And then that's the example for economics and business, but we can apply that to all areas of community building and our collective leveling up. So I'll say that, and then lastly, I'll close with, just keep in mind the bigger picture. When you keep in mind the bigger picture and have patience with one another. I said something similar in the previous episode about having patience with those who might have a different approach or might not see things the way you see it. Just be compassionate and patient with each other, and look at the bigger picture of where we want to go, and realize that by even tearing down an individual, that compounds to hindering our collective growth. So I'm Nick Westbrooks of Supreme Numerics, and another great episode, and I look forward to coming to the next one. Peace.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, what Nick said is correct. We definitely need to start uplifting one another, not tearing down one another, but also this calls for awareness. Catching yourself in that moment when you are doing that, right? Because we named 5 reasons why, stemming from history, why we do these things. And so now that we put that out there, when you catch yourself doing those things, rewind that back, right? Take a moment, regather yourself, and be like, look, I'm not going down that path, because playing the victim is not going to get anyone anywhere. But we do have to acknowledge, why we are where we are, but we're not stuck here, right? We need to be the victor and not the victim in this. And I think that once we come together and put our minds together, then we can achieve anything. And we have throughout history. I mean, throughout 5,000 plus years, throughout civilization, we have survived the worst atrocities that known to mankind, and we are still here because we are resilient people. We are loving people on top of that. And I know that we can come together and build a powerful community, but everybody has to work together and then be on the same page. And we can do that.
We can definitely do that. And I just want to close out by doing something kind of cool. Looking at the title of our episode, Do We Support Each Other? Or do we tear each other down? This is meaningful, that being our ninth episode, because the nine, we know, is the number of the humanitarian frequency. It's the universal giver, and it's full of wisdom, compassion, and transformation. And if nothing else, I hope that's what you've gotten out of this episode today. I also want to say that that title has carries a soul urge of nine in both the Pythagorean and the Chaldean system of numerology. So that means that this episode wants to bring you wisdom. It wants you to transform yourself to the higher level of unity and brotherhood for mankind. And it's spiritual, and we want to be inspirational. And we hope this has inspired you, because that is what the title wants it to do. Okay. So I want to leave you guys with that. Also, when we look at it in the Chaldean system, it adds up to a 6, and we are in that 6 universal month. And the 6 is the number of love, balance, and making adjustments. So you had to make adjustments to be on code and to do the things that we need to do to, create a better environment for our future builders of the nation. Okay. We want to continue our nation strong and let the future generation know that we support them and they can take it to heights that we didn't take it to. And when we look at it in Chaldean, it's expressing the number 3, which we're expressing this to you. This is what we're expressing to the youth. You guys can do it. We're behind you. And let's all get on code and let's get together, motivate each other, inspire each other, and take this thing to the next level. Take it to the universal level. And that's what I wanted to say. Of course, I am Queen B of Numerology, and I think this was a great episode and a great build. So peace. Positive,
Yes.
positive energy. Positive energy always corrects errors. Okay, proper education always corrects errors. Peace, peace, peace.
And I just want to thank everybody for supporting the channel, and definitely
Mhm.
pass this video along to someone who can use this information and subscribe to the channel. And then leave your comments below for any topics that you want us to cover in any future
Oh, wait,
episodes.
good
And
question.
we always like to end this with a question.
Mhm.
So the question of the day is, in what ways do you support people in the community? Right. So do you have a favorite Black owned business that you constantly buy from? Or do you go and donate to Black causes? What do you do in the community that helps uplift others, that look like you? So please put those comments below, and we look forward to seeing those in the comment section, and also seeing you next week, next Monday, same time, same channel. Peace, love, everybody. I'm Portia Cooper with the Soul Card Studio. We have Miss Melinda Valentine's with Numerology, and we have Mr. Nicholas Westbrook with Supreme Numerics. We're out, and we see you next week. Take care until then.
Kings up and queens up to the nation.